Hey there YouTube, G-Clef here. I'm here for our first episode of my mental health series. I'm here in my back room. I wanted a more intimate setting. My studio is always fun, but I wanted this series to just be kind of like a sit down and talk sort of thing. So we're here in my back room, which I use to film my Nintendo 64 videos. Currently, I have a PlayStation video out. I actually compared the two. And you can see here I have some tools. My old suit is back there. So it's kind of a rumpus room where I do instrument repair, all sorts of other stuff. There's even speakers right in front of me here. Today, we're going to be speaking about self-esteem. And self-esteem is a big thing, especially for those of us who suffer from depression and anxiety. Along with depression, I have clinical depression, comes anxiety, and anxiety is basically everywhere, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. I may have anxiety about things that others, and I do not blame you for thinking this, that others think are stupid and trivial. I may have anxiety about mowing the lawn. I may have anxiety about feeding my cat. I may have anxiety about going to the grocery store. There's all sorts of different things. And the thing is that anxiety doesn't really go away. It's something that you have to manage. So we're going to be talking about that first and foremost, and then we're going to examine the why in my case, and that is the biggest part of this series, is why. Because we're all searching for meaning behind behavior, right? So the first thing that you have to do when you're analyzing anyone, really, is examine their childhood. My childhood was, I can't complain, I wasn't abused by anyone, but I did have some family members who were critical of me at an early age, and they thought they were doing good for me, but the thing was they were too critical, and as a result, that made me think very critically about myself to the point where it wasn't constructive at all. And basically that motivated me to not care in certain circumstances, and especially in school. It motivated me to not care because I had such low self-esteem that I just figured, oh, I can't do it, I'm too stupid for that, you know. And this is how self-esteem can basically really affect your life, because if you go around with this attitude of I can't do it, I'm not good enough, well, it's basically a self-manifestation. That's exactly what's going to happen. And the problem too is that within that cycle of basically failure and all that, it's really just reinforcing what is a negative view of yourself. So what you should do first and foremost with self-esteem is sit down and write a list of qualities that you like about yourself and a list of qualities that you don't like about yourself. And doing this seems like a second grade assignment, I know, but when you have to write stuff down, it makes you think, and you're not going to have the same process of when you're just thinking about how terrible you are when you're experiencing anxiety, for example, taking a test in school, or having to talk to your boss about something. You're going to be able to think about it in a more abstract way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm not writing it down, but this is just an example of something you can do to help your own self-esteem. So let's see, things I like about myself. I like that I try to keep upbeat. I like that I'm open. And I like what I've become because of my awareness of mental health. I enjoy the way that I can make friends easily. I enjoy the way that I can be diplomatic and figure out ways to solve problems faster. I'm very happy that now I can do things that I couldn't before in the repair realm. So yeah, there's just a short list of my pluses. My minuses. I have become more self-accountable in the past few years, but I think I need to still be more vigilant with that I'm not self-accountable enough, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The things that I'm not self-accountable enough for right now are basically commitments that I made to myself. So I used to weigh a lot. I've lost about 30 pounds just by dieting, and now I started going to the gym. And there are times when it's like, hey, I just don't want to go to the gym, right? And it's understandable. I mean, I'm an adult, I work, I do a lot of other stuff. But the thing is I didn't promise myself, but I kind of said to myself, look, we have to make this a priority, and, you know, gotta work on that. Now, I think I missed about 2 or 3 days of the gym, and that is actually odd for me because I try to go every day, at least 6 days a week, you know, and just something I have to work on. Does it make me a horrible person? No, of course not. But it's something that I don't like about myself, and I want to have more of a routine. That's another thing that I don't like about myself. I'm getting better at that, but I want to have more of a complete set routine in my life, and maybe that would help me go to the gym more. Other things that I don't like about myself is my self-confidence, my self-esteem. It's better than it used to be, but it could still be better, right? So before, my list of what I don't like about myself was things like I would hole up. So depression and anxiety causes you to basically just kind of shut down. And there were times when I would just stay in bed or just be in my room for days on end because I didn't know how to deal with the anxiety. And if you're experiencing stuff like that, everything that I mentioned here is going to help you, I think, anyway. It helped me. What else did I change? I changed my diet. I changed basically, not exactly my entire outlook on life, but I tried to put a positive spin on things. And now that I've done this work, I can confidently say that my own criteria of good and bad about myself, that the good outweighs the bad. And the thing is I feel better about myself because of that. I've become more responsible. I'm still improving, but I'm a lot better than I was. I make appointments, I keep them, I show up, I do what I say I'm gonna do, and it's great, right? But how did I get there? Well, with little baby steps, right? So if you're experiencing some kind of a symptom that's holding you back, you should write about it. Diaries are great because when you have to write down what happened during the day, especially for men, I think, because we're less emotional, it really helps you kind of connect dots, you know. There are subtleties in our own behavior that point to certain things. So one of my stories is I have several jobs. All of them revolve around music. And I have a side job in Greenwich, and I teach there. And I was just practicing, you know, and one of the fellow instructors basically complimented me about how nicely I played this certain piece of classical music. And I said back to him, this was before, you know, I really thought about these things and what I was saying. He said, wow, Randy, you did great on that. And I said, well, I should. It's the only thing I'm good at. It was a half joke, but I'm also putting myself down, right? And for those of us who like to make people laugh and stuff like that, that's part and parcel of our everyday life. I used to like to make weight jokes about myself, or, you know, I'm a Muslim, so I like to make Muslim jokes. And part of that is self-degrading, but it's also to get a smile out of somebody. So there's kind of a fine line there. I don't really think my depression has to do with my jokes about myself because I don't believe that they're true. So when I first converted to Islam, gosh, over 10 years ago, I remember telling some of my close friends, we were having what we used to call a Friendsgiving. and that's where basically everybody gets together, it's potluck, right? And we were maybe our early 20s or something. And I had said, well, you have to remember, I'm a terrorist, right? And that's just funny because the West sees, a lot of Muslims as terrorists. And I knew that my friends didn't think I was a terrorist. I do not endorse terrorism. So that doesn't really have to do with my depression. But that comment that I said that it was the only thing that I'm good at, music is the only thing that I'm good at, I said that a lot throughout my life. And it is not true. I'm good at other things too. And I'm always finding new skills. And that's something that may help you with whatever journey you're taking. Learning new things. It basically will improve your self-worth because you can, especially for men who are about jobs and stuff like that, right? It improved my self-worth because now I have another skill. So also at Greenwich, I've learned more advanced instrument repair. And in doing that, I've found more confidence to learn other things. So now I do all sorts of stuff around the house. I've installed electronics. I've installed all sorts of things that I never would have done before because I didn't have that confidence. So confidence is key to your own self-esteem. And now, when I have a task to do, I don't automatically say, oh, I can't do that. The other thing about self-esteem is taking into account what others say. I generally just didn't pay attention to things other people said, mostly because I thought compliments were just to make me feel better. And that all started when I was a kid. Remember, this always goes back to when you're a kid. So I started playing saxophone, I think in 5th grade or something like that. And I am certainly a talented musician, and I always had an innate talent for music. But I didn't believe anybody when they said I was a good musician, because they also told everybody else, all the other kids, they were good musicians too. So then you don't know if they're just saying it to make you feel good, or if they're saying it because it's actually what they think, And that was a big thing for me. So as a result, I wound up just deciding, well, you know what? I'm just not going to believe anyone. And that was really to my detriment. And that's not just elementary school, that's through high school, and I had a great musical high school career. I put on my own show in high school. I don't know who's seen a Goofy movie, but that week was basically my Goofy movie. I put on the concert, I got the girl, everything was great. But it didn't have anything to do with my confidence. It really just had to do with my drive to make music and to explore music and to work on acts and all that other stuff, right? So that's where all of my musical endeavors came from. It wasn't really about hearing people say, oh, you're so good, and then acting on that. It didn't really have much to do with that. It had more to do with, as I say, just motivation to want to play music and enjoy music and make my own. It was really as simple as that. Here's the thing, remember, you are your own worst critic. And what people think about you is not what you think about you. Okay? If you think you're weird, if you think you're eccentric or something, you're probably not, really. I have a friend who I met in college, and we intermittently speak. And this friend, by the way, I'm not revealing genders or anything because I want to keep their privacy to a maximum. My privacy will not exist in this series. So, my friend has mental health issues, let's say. Not serious ones, but enough, right? Enough that they sometimes put on a facade of being happy or just to get through the day. And in a way, that's something we all do, and it is in a way healthy. But in a way, it also isn't if it's done too much. So when I go to do a lesson, if I've had a bad day, but I have to teach this kid, I try to focus on the task at hand. I don't try to be fake, but I try to at least have a smile for them, or at least tell a joke or something. And in doing that, it makes me kind of forget about what happened for a minute, you know? And it relieves me of that stress for whatever trigger, whatever stress was involved. But this person basically has this facade that helps them function, really, without blowing up, without, it's like regulating their own emotions, which again is okay when it's not done to extremes, but this friend tends to do it from extreme. They are at least open about it, and when they told me, and as I said in the introduction, listening is key. And they told me about this, they told me more details, which I don't want to divulge. And I said, hey, I understand. It's totally fine. Thank you for that information, right? So it's important, communication is very important. And if you're having a hard time, tell people that. It's not a sin. You need to be open about your emotions, not every single emotion, but you need to be more open. And if you can't make a commitment or something, tell them the truth, you know? And you will be surprised the capacity that humans have for understanding. Low self-esteem can also, of course, lead to substance abuse. And that was my case. I became pretty much a hardcore alcoholic to the point where I could put down a fifth of bourbon, which is something like 40% proof or something like that. I mean, I used to drink Wild Turkey 101, which is like 40% or something like that, 40% alcohol. And that was my coping mechanism. That was my negative coping mechanism. And now I've found positive coping mechanisms. But what that did for my self-esteem was it made me stop thinking, right? And that's the whole point, I guess, of alcohol, right? Is it puts you in another place, but that other place may or may not be good for you. Now, for people who aren't alcoholics, it's most likely a different story. I'm an alcoholic, or was an alcoholic, however you wish to say it. So it's a little bit different for me. My motivation to use was not about feeling good necessarily, it was about reducing stress. While we're on the subject of substance abuse, please do not think that addictions only happen with substances, because they don't. Addictions can happen with food, it can happen with working out, a lot of different things. And essentially, there can be some good addictions, right? But the thing is an addiction becomes bad when it starts harming you and or your relationships with others. So one thing I saw recently on television was this guy who, I guess he was in his 50s, and he loved to ride his recumbent bike. For those who don't know, those are stationary bikes. And, you know, he has this fancy one, and it tells you all the, like you would see at a gym, it tells you all the calories and how much time you've spent and all this other jazz, right? So it's like state of the art. But the thing is this guy cycles so much that he started hurting his hip. And his doctor was like, dude, slow down. You can't do this anymore. You know, this is detrimental to your health. You need to do, if you're going to do this, do it 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, or whatever, right? And a substance is involved. I assume adrenaline and other substances that get made, like dopamine, that get made in your body when you have a reward system. But this guy basically was like the heroin addict of cyclists. He didn't listen to his doctor, and just everything got more complicated. So that bike riding turned into a negative coping mechanism for him because it was a detriment to his own health. So even the things that are supposed to be good for you can be bad for you in certain ways. Another thing is devaluing yourself. And that's what I did with that story about work. I told my fellow coworker that music was the only thing I was good at, and that was devaluing myself. When you devalue yourself, you don't even give other people the chance to devalue you, right? So automatically, you think that everyone is better than you. And that was something that came from my childhood. I always thought everyone was better at everything than I was. So what can you do to improve your self-esteem? Well, I can tell you what I've done. I stopped drinking. I tried to become more responsible. I'm still working on that in that gym arena that I spoke about. But now at least I'm more responsible on the whole in life. I communicate with people. I tell them where I am. You know, before I would say, hey, come meet me at my studio and just not be here and not tell you. And that wasn't because I hated you. It wasn't because you weren't my friend. It was because I had so much anxiety about going to my studio. My own studio. And this is what anxiety does, is it makes you freeze up and hole up. And that's basically what I did a few years ago. And it got really bad because my environment changed and I got a new stressor in that environment in the form of a person. And I had to learn how to deal with that stressor in a positive way. And that's really what helped me. So you need to look at all of your stressors too and figure out just solutions to it. If you can't change the way a person is talking to you, change your perception of the way that they're talking to you. So, things to do. 1, write a diary. Writing a diary will really help you think about these things. That work incident came up in my diary. At least cut down on self-destructive behavior. If you can't stop drinking, minimize your drinking. If you can't stop bicycling, minimize your bicycling, right? Take all those negative things and try that you do to cope and try to minimize them. Some people even cope by not being around others. And in and of itself, that is unhealthy, right? So one thing such a person could do is they could just go out in public. They don't need to have an appointment with somebody. They don't need to be meeting a friend. Go walk around the mall. Go take a walk down the street on the sidewalk. You'll run into somebody. You don't even have to say anything to them, because just being around people makes you feel like part of humanity. That is a common negative coping mechanism, is to stay away from people and be your own little self and have your own little place. But the problem is when you do that, it makes you vulnerable when you're not in that place. It makes you feel more vulnerable when you're around people and you feel like you have to protect yourself, right? So that's a negative coping mechanism. But the way you can at least baby step your way towards not having to do that is just being around people in any capacity. Another big thing is to look at things in a positive way, and instead of dwelling on the bad, try and think about how you can make it good or make it better. If you have a problem, think about how you can solve it rather than the hassle about solving the problem. Because that's one of the things that happens to me in my anxiety. And still to this day, you have to remember, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that, nobody's ever going to be perfect. I'm always going to make mistakes. And there are still some issues that I have where things just snowball because my anxiety stops me from acting on them. And that can be something as simple as not mowing my lawn. And, I don't do that long enough that the lawn gets way too long and then I make more work for myself, right? Various things. So what I think about If I don't want to mow my lawn, I think, well, it's gonna suck if I don't, because I'm gonna have to go back out there and it's gonna be even worse, an even bigger job, and I'm gonna have to bag the lawn and all this jazz. It's an hour of my life, let's go mow the lawn, right? Try to think of things in that way. Even when I was in high school, it was the same thing. I didn't want to go to choir or even jazz band or something, and I'm a musician and music is my passion. And that is how much my anxiety affected me, was that I was like ho-hum about going to music things, but I would say, it's just an hour of your life, So try to look at things like that, minimize them, not too much, but look at the grander scheme of things, and that's the end of that. Same thing when you do anything that's anxiety-inducing. Try to minimize it slightly and look at it in the grander scheme of things. Recently, I had an issue when I was repairing an antique uke, and my first instinct was to call up one of my basically expert string repair friends. And I was like, what do I do? And panicking and everything. And he was like, look, man, when you're on your deathbed, is this what you're gonna be thinking about? And he said, like, look, if you ruined the instrument, you ruined the instrument, and you're gonna have to pay them money for it, whoop-de-doo. There are so many more problems in life, there's so much more to life than this one thing. And that really helped me in that moment. And this is stuff that you can do for people yourself as well. It's not just about you and your mental health, but it's also about the mental health of the people that are around you. So keep that in mind. So that basically covers my self-esteem episode. I hope this helped you. The goal here is to help you or help you help others with their self-esteem and their mental health. I'll see you next time.